उपलब्धियां हैं जिसके कारण लोगों ने भारत के ऐसे बड़े लोकतंत्र ने इनको फिर से चुना है। पिछले 10 सालों में अगर सरकार की खास उपलब्धियां देखें तो देखिए, आर्थिक वृद्धि महत्वपूर्ण है। कुछ अगर उसमें से महत्वपूर्ण अगर बताया जाए, भारत अब दुनिया की 5वीं सबसे बड़ी अर्थव्यवस्था बन चुकी है। भुगतान में देखा जाए, आधार, यूपीआई, डिजिटल पेमेंट में व्यापक इसका इस्तेमाल किया जा रहा है और इसे डिजिटल क्रांति का भी नाम दिया गया है। इस पद्धति का उपयोग तो अब दूसरे देश के लोग भी करना चाहते हैं। जीएसटी का कार्यान्वयन देखें, स्टार्टअप्स को बढ़ावा जैसे पहलों से आर्थिक गतिविधियों में तेजी आई है। मेक इन इंडिया से घरेलू उत्पाद को बढ़ावा मिला है और सामाजिक कल्याण में तो क्या कहना, जन धन योजना से लगभग 50 करोड़ से अधिक लोगों के बैंक खाते खुले हैं, जिसमें महिलाओं के खाते अहम है। उज्ज्वला योजना, स्वच्छ भारत मिशन, किसान सम्मान, बहुत सारी ऐसी चीजें हैं जिनका उल्लेख करना इसलिए भी मुनासिब है क्योंकि इस वजह से ही सरकार को पुनः देश की जनता चुनती है।
Modi ji often says this is indeed India's hour. India is taking giant strides in the world on various fronts, whether it is cinema, sports, space. We are seeing confidence, courage, and a certain panache in various fields of excellence. And in each of these fields, it's the women who are leading the way. Payal Kapadia made history at the Cannes Film Festival with her film All We Imagine as Light, for which she won the Grand Prix. Anusuya Sengupta won.
So every incident will teach you something. ఇప్పుడు మనకు ఉదాహరణ చెప్తాను. హాస్పిటల్ అడ్మినిస్ట్రేషన్ అనేది కేవలం ఒక గాంధీలోనే ఉండే. ఏ రకంగా అయితే ప్రభుత్వ హాస్పిటళ్ళు కూడా ప్రైవేట్ హాస్పిటల్కి అడ్మినిస్ట్రేషన్తో నడవాలి, ఎలాంటి మార్పు తీసుకురావాలి. సో దీని రేపు రాబోయే కాలంలో ఇటు కార్పొరేట్ వ్యవస్థ ఏ రకంగా నడుస్తుందో ఆ రకంగా మా డాక్టర్సు
One, two, three, four. Huh?
Hello, check microphone testing.
చేసేయండి వాటర్ అంతా కేబుల్ మీద బకెట్ బకెట్ పెట్టి లేదు వాటర్ వాటర్ బకెట్ పెట్టు పడిపోతుంది పెట్టు మళ్ళీ రిటర్న్ ఇట్లా ఊరు మళ్ళీ అటు ఊరు అంటే కానీ వాళ్ళు కూడా వచ్చేటప్పుడు వైద్య ఇచ్చినామనుకో పోతుంది మాత్రం ఆ తీసి ఉంచుకో కావాలంటే మరి అక్కడి నుంచి తీసుకొస్తాం మనం బొమ్మ వస్తుంది అదే 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 మరి నువ్వు తీసేసి వచ్చేస్తావా మరి ఎట్లా
హలో హలో
హలో
भूमि मधोपुरः यत्पुरुषेण अभिषा प्रियमेधा स्वच्छतार्चन्दपुत्रका उदपुरन्नु दृष्टुवर्चतार्चद प्रार्चत श्रियं वर्धिष्यमायुष्यमारोग्यमायुधा शोभमानो मक्यते धान्यं धनमिन्द्राय सोमाय सुवर्णकलशे मङ्गलं दीर्घमायुः हरि ओम देवी नारायणाय नमः ओम माधवाय नमः ओम गोविंदाय नमः ओम विष्णवे नमः ओम मधुसूदनाय नमः ओम त्रिविक्रमाय नमः ओम वामनाय नमः ओम श्रीधराय नमः ओम ऋषिकेशाय नमः ओम पद्मनाभाय नमः ओम दामोदराय नमः ओम संकर्षणाय नमः ओम वासुदेवाय नमः ओम प्रद्युम्नाय नमः ओम अनिरुद्धाय नमः ओम पुरुषोत्तमाय नमः ओम नारसिंहाय नमः ओम जनचाय नमः ओम जनार्दनाय नमः ओम उपेन्द्राय नमः ओम हरये नमः ओम श्रीकृष्णाय नमः ओम श्रीकृष्ण परब्रह्मणे नमो नमः शुभाभ्युदयार्थं च शुभे शोभने मंगले मुहूर्ते अत्र पृथिव्यां जम्बोद्वीपे भरतवर्षे भरतखण्डे मेरोर्दक्षिण दिग्भागे श्रीरङ्गस्योत्तरे दिक्प्रदेशे कृष्णा गोदावर्योर्मध्यदेशे भाग्यनगरे समस्त भगवत भागवताचार्य सन्निधौ अस्मिन् वर्तमानस्य व्यवहारिक चान्द्रमानेन प्रभवादि षष्ठी संवत्सराणां मध्ये श्री क्रोधिनाम संवत्सरे उत्तरायणे शिशिर ऋतु माघमासे शुक्लपक्षे द्वितीयां वासरौ वासरस्थौ शुभवासरे शुभनक्षत्रे शुभयोगे शुभकरण एवं गुण विशेषण विशिष्टायाम् अस्यां शुभतिथौ यजमानस्य तेलंगाना राष्ट्र अभिवृद्धि सिद्ध्यर्थं नूतन वैद्यशाला उस्मानिया वैद्यशाला निर्माण समये यथाशक्ति भूमि पूजा शंकुस्थापन कर्मणि कर्तुं मम अधिकार योग्यता सिद्धिरस्ति भवन्तो ब्रुवन्तु कर्तुं तव अधिकार योग्यता सिद्धिरस्तु हरिः ओम भूमिर्भूम नाज्यौर्वरिणान्तरिक्षं महित्वा उपस्ते देव्यतिमन्नादमन्नाध्यायात् कलेन्द्राय महनीय गुणात्मजे चक्रवर्ती तनोजाय सार्वभौमाय मंगल वेद वेदांत वेद्याय मेघश्यामलमूर्तये पुंसां मोहन रूपाय पुण्यश्लोकाय मंगलम् मंगलाशासन परैर्मदाचार्य पुरोगमैः सर्वैश्च पूर्वैराचार्यै सत्कृतायास्तु मंगलम् शतमानं भवति शतायुः पुरुषशतेन्द्रिय आयुष्येवेन्द्रिये प्रतिष्ठ रोचनो रोचमान शोभन शोभमान कल्याणः आचम्य प्राणानायम्य केशवाय नमः ॐ नारायणाय नमः रावृणीमहे गातुं यज्ञाय गातुं यज्ञपतये दैवे स्वस्तिरस्तु नः स्वस्तिर्मानुषेभ्यः ऊर्ध्वञ्जि गातुवेशजो शन्नो अस्तुद्युपदे शञ्चतुष्पदे ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः ॐ शन्नो मित्रस्य वरुणः शन्नो भवत्पर्यमा शन्न इंद्रो बृहस्पतिः शन्नो विष्णुरुक्रमः नमो ब्रह्मणे नमस्ते वायो त्वमेव प्रत्यक्षं ब्रह्मासि त्वमेव प्रत्यक्षं ब्रह्म वदिष्यामि ऋतं वदिष्यामि सत्यं वदिष्यामि तन्मावतु तद्वक्तारमवतु अवतु माम् अवतु वक्तारो ओम शांति शांति शांतिः भूमिर्भूम కూర్చో కింద కూర్చో భూమిర్భూం వరుణో ధ్రువం దేవో బృహస్పతి ధ్రువంత ఇంద్రశ్చాగ్నిశ్చ రాష్ట్రం ధారయతాం ధ్రువం ధ్రువేణ అవిషా వరుణో ధ్రువం దేవో బృహస్పతి ధ్రువంత ఇంద్రశ్చాగ్నిశ్చ రాష్ట్రం ధారయతాం ధ్రువం ओम ओषधय संवदन्ते सोमेन स राज्ञा यस्मै करोति ब्राह्मणस्तगुं राजन् पारयामसि ओम ध्रुवं ध्रुवेण अभिषा तस्मै देवा अधिब्रुवन् अयं च ब्रह्मणस्पतिः गातुं यज्ञाय गातुं यज्ञपते दैवे स्वस्तिरस्तु नः स्वस्तिर्मानुषेभ्यः ऊर्ध्वञ्जि गातु भेषजो शन्नो अस्तुद्विपदे शञ्चतुष्पदे ओम शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः स्वामी पुरुष एवेदगं सर्वं यद्भूतं यच्च भव्यं वृतामृतत्वशेषानः यदन्नेनातिरोहति एतावानस्य महिमा नवदांजलि श्रीकांत नवदांजलि व्याक्रामदो शासना नशने अभिः तस्मात् विराड जायत विराजो अधिपुरुषः सजातो अच्चारिच्यत पश्चात् भूमि मधोपुरः यत्पुरुषेण अविशा देवा यज्ञमतन्वत वसन्तो अस्य सीदाज्यं ओम नारायणाय नमः माधवाय नमः गोविंदाय नमः विष्णवे नमः मधुसूदनाय नमः त्रिविक्रमाय नमः वामनाय नमः श्रीधराय नमः ऋषिकेशाय नमः पद्मनाभाय नमः दामोदराय नमः संकर्षणाय नमः वासुदेवाय नमः प्रद्युम्नाय नमः अनिरुद्धाय नमः पुरुषोत्तमाय नमः अधोक्षजाय नमः नारसिंहाय अच्युताय नमः जनार्दनाय नमः उपेन्द्राय नमः हरये नमः श्रीकृष्णाय नमः श्रीकृष्ण परब्रह्मणे नमो नमः ओषधे साजा वरुणो ध्रुवं देवो बृहस्पतिः ध्रुवन्त इन्द्रश्चाग्निश्च राष्ट्रं धारय ओम भूमिर्भूम्नाज्जौर्वरिणान्तरिक्षं महित्वा उपस्ते देते व्यरिदेग्निमन्नादमन्नाज्जायाददे आयंगौ पुष्णिरक्रमीद इट्ला मादनं पुरः पितरञ्च प्रयस्तुवः श्री प्रत्यस्य वहज्जुभिः अस्य प्राणादपानच्चन्तश्चरति रोचना व्यक्षन्महिषस्वः यत्वा क्रुद्धा पर्वम् यदवर्चा सुकल्पमग्ने तत्तव पुनस्तो दीपयामसे यत्ते मन्युपरोक्तस्य पृथ्वी मधुधद्वरे आदित्या विश्वे तद्देवा वसवश्च समाभरन् मेदिनी देवी वसुन्धरा स्यात् वसुधा देवी वासवे ब्रह्मवर्चस पितॄणां स्तोत्रं चक्षुर्मनः देवी हिरण्यगर्भिणे देवी प्रसूवरे सदने सच्चायने सीता समुद्रवती सावित्री ख्यनो देवी मक्यंगे महोदरणे महोज्जदिष्टतो शृंगे शृंगे यज्ञे यज्ञे विभीषणे इंद्रपत्नी व्यापिनी सरसिजयने श्रियंधाराजा सच्चंदो परिमेदिने दुवन् देवो बृहस्पतिः चाग्निश्च राष्ट्रं धारयतां ध्रुवं ध्रुवेण अविशा तस्मै देव अधिब्रुवन् अयं च ब्रह्मणस्पतिः सूर्यादीनां नवानां ग्रहाणां विक्रिता सुप्रसन्ना वरदा भवतु ओम या फलनेर्याफला पुष्पाया च पुष्पने बृहस्पति प्रसूता स्थानो मंचन त्वकुंहसः तत्सुमुहूर्तकाले सूर्यादीनां नवानां ग्रहाणाम् अत्यन्त सूर्यका फलसिद्धिरस्तु अर्चद प्रेमेदा स्वच्छतार्चन्द पुत्रिका उदवरण्य दृष्टुवर्चतार्चद प्रार्चता विसृणुयाम देवाः भद्रं पश्येमाक्षवीर्यजत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैस्तुष्टुवागं सस्तनोभिः व्यशेम देवहितं यदायुः इन्द्रो वृद्धस्रवाः स्वस्ति नः पूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्ति नस्तार्क्ष्यो अरिष्टनेमि ओम इदान लेशेंस ना ओम शांति वेरी गुड బాగా పలికింది ఏ కదా ఏంటి సార్ ఫస్ట్ జం ఓ జంబైరాజ్యం పారమేష్టగుం రాజ్యం మహారాజ్యమాధిపత్యమయం సంబంధ పర్యాయ ఓం जाय परियुच्यो मोति रात्र उत्तम महर्भवति सर्वस्याप्यै सर्वस्य दिच्यै सर्वमेव देनाप्नोति सर्वं जयति ओम नारायणाय विद्महे वासुदेवाय धीमहि तन्नो विष्णु प्रचोदयात् महादेव्यै च गोविंद ఏడుకొండలవాడ గోవింద వెంకటరమణ గోవింద తెలంగాణ రాష్ట్ర వైద్య ఆరోగ్య శాఖ బ్రహ్మణో వేదామృతేన రుదాం పురీం తస్మై దండ దండ ప్రజాందతో భాగతేజేనైవైనం ప్రణయితే బ్రాహ్మణ ఋషేయ ఉద్ధరేత్ బ్రాహ్మణో వై దండ దండ తీసుకో బ్రాహ్మణో వై సర్వా దేవతాః సర్వాభిరేవైనం దేవతాభిరుద్ధరతే యావతీర్వై దేవతాస్తా సర్వా వేద విధి బ్రాహ్మణే వసంతే తస్మాత్ బ్రాహ్మణేభ్యో వేదవిభ్యో దివే దివే నా శ్రీలంకేర్తయే దేత ఏవ దేవతా ప్రీణాతి పర్యాప్య అనంతరాజాయ సర్వస్తోమోతి దేవేంద్రియే ప్రతిష్టతి రోచనో రోచమాన శోభన శోభమాన కళ్యాణ సిద్ధిరస్తు నం భవతి శతాయు పురుషస్యతేంద్రియ ఆయుష్యేవేంద్రియే ప్రతిష్టతి రోచనో రోచమాన శోభన శోభమాన కళ్యాణ సదాస్తు సమస్త సన్మంగళాని భవంతు సర్వే జనా సుఖినో భవంతు తథాస్తు శతమానం భవతి శతాయు పురుషస్యతేంద్రియ ఆయుష్యేవేన్ అయిపోయింది.
Bro, open the door now.
Hey, we are studying, bro.
So, open now.
Can't risk, bro. Come tomorrow.
But it's my house. Bingo potato chips. Mind-blowing chips for the most mindless friendships.
Decathlon sale. Get up to 60% off on your favorite sports products until stock lasts. Visit your nearest store or install the app.
अब वो मॉस्क तोड़ के उसको टेम्पल को रीबिल्ड करोगे, कितने रीबिल्ड करोगे?
जितने हो सके.
It could be Hindus who don't want any more bloodshed.
Why do they expect bloodshed? Who are they expecting it from? Why don't they answer that question?
Because when somebody makes a claim कि इसको तोड़ो फिर से
तो
बनाओ.
अब जवाब दो भाई कोर्ट में. हमें मतलब you prove us wrong in court. Evidence for evidence. Evidence के जवाब में तलवार क्यों उठ रहा है भाई यहाँ पे?
But what if the Muslim community turns around and say कि तुमने यहाँ पे रेल भवन बनाया, रेल भवन के नीचे हमारा मदरसा हुआ करता था. ये
ठीक है, उसके नीचे क्या हुआ करता था ये भी देख लेते हैं.
What is happening with regard to Sambhal, Places of Worship Act, Waqf, sense of anxiety that are we heading into a period of social unrest?
If a lawful legal proceeding and action is brought to a grinding halt under the fear of stone pelting, what does it say about your aspirations of becoming a Vishwaguru? I don't understand the constant chest thumping about Hindutva and Bharat without having the courage to actually reclaim the spirit of Bharat.
Aren't the mosques also spirit of Bharat?
I agree, but as long as they are not on occupied sites.
Talapati Vijay, how do you see his rise?
After Kamal Hassan's failure, he may have been somebody's plan B.
Asaduddin Owaisi, his politics.
He knows how to present his position, which is favorable to his community, within the four corners of the constitution. That is always a tough game to play, and he does it reasonably well.
Namaste Jai Hind, you're watching or listening to another edition of the ANI podcast with Smita Prakash. In the studio with me today is J. Sai Deepak, who's appeared twice on the podcast before. But today the conversation will mainly center around the Supreme Court order on the Places of Worship Act 1991. The Supreme Court has recently barred civil courts across the country from registering fresh suits challenging the ownership and title of any place of worship, and from ordering surveys of disputed religious places until further orders. Now, junior courts cannot order a survey or seek a report from the Archaeological Survey of India, as have been done in several recent instances. In May 2022, after the Babri Mosque Ram Janmabhoomi case reached the Supreme Court, the Chief Justice of India, D.Y. Chandrachud, orally observed that a survey may not necessarily fall foul of the Places of Worship Act. And then, between 2022 and 2024, at least 6 suits were filed claiming past existence of a Hindu temple at the site of a mosque or dargah. Surveys were ordered in 3 of these cases. With the latest Supreme Court ruling, let's get a clearer picture of what is the way forward for those fighting for pre-existing temples. Over to J. Sai Deepak. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thank you.
So, we've had you before on the show.
Twice.
Right. So I think one was on your book.
Yes, ma'am.
When it had come, and the second one was probably
Sanatana Dharma statement of Udayanidhi.
Sanatana
Was
Dharma,
September.
and also I think elections coming up, and
Yeah.
that happening. So this time I thought of you and I wanted to talk about the constitutional debate that was happening in Parliament, so much happening and things. I wanted to talk about that because that is also your forte. But what is disturbing a lot of people, especially youngsters, is about what is happening with regard to Sambhal, Places of Worship Act, Waqf, all this coming up, and a sense of anxiety that are we heading into a period of social unrest?
I think your audience deserves honesty. Therefore, let me, for the benefit of their consumption, disclose the fact that I represent the Kashi royal family in the proceedings there. So obviously, I've chosen a side. And considering the fact that the matter is sub judice, I'll keep my comments tempered on the subject. But nevertheless, what already exists in public domain through my articles and speeches, I think I can speak on that. So the optics of it, or the social unrest part of it, if a court order of a survey incites violence or results in unprovoked violence, or the court order itself is seen as a provocation, then there is a problem in the manner in which the Indian state's exclusive claim over the monopoly of violence or force has been challenged. You can't even enforce a court order. And two, if a lawful legal proceeding and action is brought to a grinding halt under the fear of stone pelting, what does it say about your aspirations of becoming a Vishwaguru?
Okay.
What exactly are you projecting by way of strength? If you can't project strength internally, don't hope for others to take you seriously outside. Three, the action, in my limited submission, since the matter is sub judice, is perfectly legal. And I said as much in court. So let's see how it plays out. I'll keep my powder dry for the court. Without getting into the legality of it, I believe it is legal. There are articles to this effect that I've written. But I think constitutional institutions owe their allegiance to the law, to the constitution, and they should simply ask themselves whether these proceedings must be held hostage under the shadow or threat of violence. I hope they won't be. And two, what does it do to the rights of all those parties who have a right under the law to initiate these proceedings? That is the basic question. See, if social unrest becomes the barometer for any action, कोई भी किसी को पैसे देके 40-50 लोगों को इकट्ठा करेगा और पत्थर फेंकना शुरू करेगा. That immediately questions the law and the legal action. ऐसे थोड़ी होगा. That can't be the barometer or the yardstick for it. Three, I genuinely hope that this matter is heard quickly and it is decided regardless of reactions of any section of the public or community from whichever side. Decide it on merits. Deal with it on merits. Let's apply the black letter of the law along with its spirit and ask ourselves whether what has been happening in the context of Kashi and Mathura are truly unconstitutional or illegal or impermissible or so on and so forth. Let's test that.
But it's not just Kashi Mathura. Now there are so many. The lower courts admitted several.
So?
So it's going to be several of them and now they can't.
Right.
Because there's a stay now.
That I agree. See, let's look at the biggest bogey that's constantly cited. Ek khula to kitne khulenge? You're opening the floodgates. Floodgates to what? Floodgates to what? Reclamation. And I don't understand the constant chest thumping about Hindutva and Bharat without having the courage to actually reclaim the spirit of Bharat. And I've said this before, that if the Supreme...
And the mosques also spirit of Bharat?
I agree. But as long as they are not on occupied sites.
That is where the dispute occurs.
That is where the dispute occurs. So what are we saying? See, the Supreme Court itself, through its verdict of the Ayodhya case, on which I have certain disagreements, has shown the path. A party which has lost was given land by the Supreme Court when it doesn't deserve to be given land. You have enough property through Waqf property and you're anyway claiming more, the rest of Bharat also. You keep building there. It is possible to simply evolve a process of exchange, which, although is not necessary or required, you can do this in the interest of peace. But if you wish to retain an occupied site, knowing fully well that it has a seriously contentious history and history that goes against you, and you still hold on to it, how do you expect an awakened Bharat to respond to it when history is beginning to resurface? Pun intended.
How many places will you keep saying that this is occupied, that is occupied? How are you going to say it? Because what you said once is that there are 4,000 sites.
Actually, I said 40,000.
40,000.
And that figure could have been exaggerated. But what did I say? We spoke of one wasn't acceptable. We spoke of three, it wasn't acceptable. I said, then if negotiation has no room here, then why will I limit the scope of my claim? Mangna hi to sara mang lo abhi. What is the point?
Ki kuch to milega.
Exactly. And not just that. Kuch to milega is a different issue. At the very least, the history of each of these places needs to come out. People should know Ram Janmabhoomi was not isolated. People should know Kashi was not isolated. And people should know this was not exactly a northern-centric phenomenon. Across the board.
Tipu.
100%. Tipu and so many places. I think in Warangal, so many temples. Shaktipeethas are there. Therefore,
Kashmir.
What exactly? And Kashmir is also in the 90s, for God's sakes. Not just, you're not talking about the medieval ages. So what these proceedings do is to give you an opportunity to present evidence, which unfortunately haven't found their way into textbooks. It will generate a discourse. Hopefully it should trigger introspection. I have a slightly mixed position on the question of jati, but nevertheless, if the history of so-called caste and its, let's say, related behavior have constantly found reference in our public discourse and, let's say, in our textbooks and every other place, and there are policies to that particular effect which are trying to redress a certain grievance, tell me, why does the logic of that position change in the context of religion? Answer that question. The position is repair. It's reparative justice. It's not retributive justice, right? It is to ameliorate certain social, let's say, social behavioral patterns. Now, how much of it is based on, let's say, actual history? That's a different question altogether. But nevertheless, the Indian state seems to have taken that position for granted. Why does it want to take a different position in the context of inter-community relations when it doesn't have a problem taking that position in intra-community relations? So divide the Hindu and deprive the Hindu of his opportunity to reclaim his sites as well? That can't be the strategy. So you constantly talk about jati, caste, reservation, keep us divided. And when it comes to the other side, secularism will prevail. Ye thodi ho sakta hai. Therefore, my position is very clear. The Indian state, by now, should have constituted a commission for truth, reclamation and reconciliation, which it has not had the courage of its conviction to do in all these years, even now. Do it, set out a clear policy, ask yourself, here's the simple thing. Before the farm laws were asked to be stayed or not implemented by the Supreme Court, the question that was put to the government was, did you speak with these parties, the affected parties? Did you undertake a wide-ranging consultation? Now here's the question. Before the Places of Worship Act was brought into effect, I think in 1991, how many affected parties on both sides were consulted? Was a baseline study undertaken to find out how many such existing disputes are pending in courts, or there are existing claims even outside of courts? As long as you've not done that study, it's a knee-jerk reaction. Now let's go to the next step. Why does Ram Janmabhoomi deserve an exceptional treatment through non-application of the Places of Worship Act, which exemption is not available either to Kashi, Mathura or any other temple? Isn't that discrimination according to the constitution? So
what did the court say then? Why was it special? Why was it different?
The court did not say anything to that effect. So here's what happened. And just pardon me here, I'm going to get slightly academic here, but I think it's important. We are being told constantly in public discourses and other places that the Ayodhya verdict itself has taken a position on the Places of Worship Act. And therefore, the challenge to this act is meaningless because apparently that judgment has given a stamp of approval to the act and its constitutionality. Okay? We are being told you can't challenge this because the Constitution bench has already said this is a perfectly constitutional act. Point number one. The constitutionality of the Places of Worship Act was never an issue in the Ram Janmabhoomi case.
Yeah, why?
Because the Act says, Section 5 says that this dispute is outside the purview of the application of this act.
Yeah, because it was pre-1991.
Not just that. According to them, they have just said, see, that the reasons for it we don't know.
They said no, that it was already in court before the 1991.
Then what about, let's say, okay, the only fact of the matter is there was a pending litigation, so to speak, since 1858. But the fact of the matter is the provision says this is exempt, right? If the provision says that the act exempts its application to this dispute, that means there is no reason to discuss the act in the context of the dispute. So the law basically says, and this is from the Supreme Court, no finding of the court on an issue which is not an issue before it in a particular case is binding. मुद्दा आपके सामने खड़ा ही नहीं हुआ किसी, let's say, case में. Your observations in that regard are what we call obiter dicta, marginal observations, non-binding observations, no precedential value. Okay? So for whatever it's worth, those findings do not come in the way of a challenge because they are obiter dicta. Second, as far as the trigger for the discussion in the Ayodhya judgment itself, you'll be surprised at what has happened. 3 judges pass a verdict, a 2-1 verdict in Allahabad in favor of the temple side in the context of Ram Janmabhoomi. One of them, I think, is Justice Sharma. I think there are 2 Hindu judges. One is Justice Sharma, Justice Agarwal, and I think it's Justice Khan. So one of them so one of those judgments of the 3 judges becomes the trigger for the Supreme Court to take it up. Now, why does the Supreme Court take it up here? Supreme Court says, in the 3-judge verdict, the Places of Worship Act has been discussed by the lower court or by the Allahabad High Court. Therefore, we will have to decide or we'll have to adjudicate upon it. The single judge, or let's say the judge of the Allahabad High Court as part of the 3-judge bench, never discussed the Places of Worship Act at all. He was quoting a 95 judgment of the Supreme Court to say that it is possible to enforce rights under Article 25 through standard suits. And in that judgment, in the extracted portion, there was a reference to Places of Worship Act. That extraction is there in the Allahabad High Court judgment. The Supreme Court mistakes this extraction to be a finding of the judge of the Allahabad High Court, when in fact he was merely quoting it. There was no such issue for him to even decide on. And then for 10 pages, the Supreme Court discusses the Places of Worship Act, saying he has decided or he's returned a finding, so we too have to comment on this particular issue. It's actually based on a proper clerical error. Proper clerical. And I wrote an article to this effect in 2020, within 6 months of the judgment. And I wrote 2 pieces on my blog called Yukti, immediately after the judgment, saying there is a very glaring error here. There's no reason for this discussion to have taken place either legally or even factually. After I published this article in a particular portal, check out which portal this is, they asked me to stop writing. They asked me to stop writing. Until then, they were literally after me saying, "Ek column to likh do, hafte ke liye likh do." This is what they said. And after they said, "Thoda zyada ho gaya." I said, what was wrong in this? So therefore, there is no constitutional bar. There is no judgment that effectively shields this act from any challenge. But the best possible position I am taking, or even Vishnu is taking, and which is on record is...
On the Kashi.
No, just on the act. Act ko rehne do. Usse kuch nahi hoga. Because the act speaks of the possibility of a survey to determine if a particular site is an archaeological site within the meaning of the Archaeological Act of 1958, which is it has to be 100 years or more. So the moment you establish within the meaning of that particular provision, section 4.3, that this is indeed a site which is more than 100 years, then the bar under the act stops applying. That means you can say that reclamation is possible once you establish it's beyond 100 years.
So you bring the ASI first.
Correct. That's what has happened here. ASI का सर्वे कराइए, find out कि ये 100 साल है या उससे पुराना है, इसके नीचे क्या था, सब निकालिए.
Is the ASI equipped to go to the 40,000 sites to go and see it?
Well, if this country is serious about it, then it can ramp up.
Okay, so I have a couple of them. The Sambal Masjid in UP, where we saw violent protests.
Atala Jaunpur.
Then there's Gyanvapi Masjid in UP. There's Ajmer Sharif Dargah in Rajasthan. The Shahi Eidgah. Shamsi Jama Masjid. Tiliwali Masjid in UP. These are 3 in UP. Delhi's Quwwatul Islam Masjid. And then Kamal Maula Masjid in MP. Now, these are some of the major mosques where Hindu community says that it was built over destroyed temples.
Madhya Pradesh has several such sites, including sites dedicated to Devi Saraswati.
So sites bole to temples which have been turned. So what, there are pillars or something where?
Clear inscriptions. I think there's a place called Dhar.
Yeah.
There are several such places.
So now, these are the ones which are in court. Some of these are in court. Dhar
Right.
maybe not in court.
It's not in court yet.
Yeah. So now these, the ones that I have listed out, these are in court.
Right.
What happens to these cases now? They just
As of now, until
Tariq pe tariq pe tariq.
it's in principle, it's adjourned sine die. Because no effective orders can be passed.
So now, unless in the Supreme Court somebody challenges it,
Correct.
the lower courts cannot pick it up.
Until I think a resolution of the Places of Worship Act challenge is decided one way or another, the stay seems like it might continue.
Okay. Will the two communities in the entire country, will they now sit silent after the Supreme Court verdict, or do you think that the Hindu community has been too charged now to let sleeping dogs lie? Maybe wrong metaphor I'm using.
I don't know what they will do. I can perhaps come
Because there is no one organization picking it up. It's not as if the VHP, like they did with Babri Masjid, and so it's not one organization anywhere.
I'm happy with that.
You're happy with that?
Yes.
You
see, the thing is, there are two sides to it. One, and somebody decides to be, let's say, a loose cannon. On that front, I have a problem with that person if they don't go properly prepared. It's a serious issue.
Because it sets a precedent.
Sets a precedent. Your dismissal or acceptance sets a precedent for the rest of us. So if you want to get into this battle, you want to join the fray, please come better prepared. Anybody jumps into this because they also want to be heard, then the rest of us will pay the price. Now, a centralized command structure also would mean that if a decision is taken that isse zyada hum challenge nahi karenge, that curtails the rights of the community, and nobody can speak on behalf of everyone. Because you see, some of these temples could be Kul Devtas and Kul Devis of a particular community. आप होते कौन है उनका मुंह बंद करने वाले? They have their specific rights under Articles 25 and 26 to say, this is our Kul Devta Mandir. It is more important to us than certain other big temples. Can you stop us? Why? Because I have a rin or a duty or an obligation to this particular temple. And that's how this entire concept goes on. We have actually an umbilical cord, a hereditary relationship with this temple. And if that temple stands occupied, what are we supposed to do? How can you ask them to say, नहीं नहीं आप चुप बैठ जाओ, ये तीन मिल गए ना आप चुप बैठ जाओ? ये नहीं हो सकता है. If you recognize Hindu diversity, then you have to recognize the diversity of temples and voices. Otherwise, it's just let's say, an ornamental phrase that you use in the interest of showing plurality within the Hindu community.
షూట్ అద్భుతంగా జరిగింది జాన్వి.
ఇది వెటెరో టైల్స్ అద్భుతం.
టైల్స్
వెటెరో టైల్స్ వీటి అద్భుతమైన ఫినిష్ మీ చురుకైన చూపులని
రిఫ్రెష్ చేసే.
వెటెరో టైల్స్ రిఫ్రెష్ జిందగీ.
अरे दादिया बैठो तो स्नैक्स का हम संभालेंगे.
दादी की कहानियाँ आपके बिना और छुट्टियाँ अपनों के बिना अधूरी हैं. इन छुट्टियों में एक चक्कर बचपन का लगा आएं.
But there is a feeling that, this happened in the past. The desecration happened in the past. So shouldn't there be a time period that, okay, from 1800 onwards, from 1900 onwards?
Yes, we have the time period.
So
712 AD. Time period chahiye. Is this the first time I'm making this statement? No. Open my book, first book.
Yeah.
What would be the cutoff date to test what is decoloniality for Bharat? I specifically said it's not from the point when the Christian colonizer entered this country. I said it starts from the invasion of Sindh. I specifically said this. I knew this argument would come about, and therefore I gave the cutoff date in the book very clearly. It's not an afterthought. That we have suffered two different waves and two different, let's say, shades of colonization. And therefore, we have to apply different yardsticks and standards. If South America has determined for itself what shall be the cutoff date, that is from the entry of the conquistadors in Latin America, we have a different yardstick for Bharat. So that recognition already stands. You want a cutoff date, we'll give you a cutoff date. See, somebody contributes money, builds a particular structure, good, no problem. You broke something and you built something, then the communities have an existing right. Because Ram Janmabhoomi says, एक बार प्राण प्रतिष्ठा हो गया, एनर्जी वहां पे स्थापित हो चुका, उसका आवाहन हो चुका है, उसका कुछ नहीं किया जा सकता है until it has been deconsecrated. Desecration is not the same as deconsecration.
Explain.
Desecration is to khandify the murti.
Yeah.
Deconsecration is visarjan.
Oh, that so many temples have happened.
Exactly. Therefore, we are saying जब तक deconsecration नहीं हुआ है and पद्धति के हिसाब से वहाँ पे energy
Is there a word for desecration?
That
or
is
have you just
Visarjan.
created?
No, I am saying desecration is to break and
Vandalize
defile.
it, break.
Deconsecration is to undo the process.
Huh.
So when you do prana pratishtha, you're inviting the energy to reside at that place. You can also ask it to go back. And this happens in every puja. In every yagna, in every homa, the purpose of, let's say, the purohit, there are 4 corners of the Yagnapit. And there are different names for it. Basically, what they do, the first process is sankalp karke avahan karna. But after the puja, thank you.
Yes.
That is the same thing that can happen with an image or a deity or let's say an idol, an icon, so to speak, a murti. That has not happened. That is the basis for reclamation of Ram Janmabhoomi, saying even after the construction of the disputed structure, Prana Pratishtha remains valid.
But then pujas never used to happen, no, after...
That doesn't matter. Puja ho ya na ho, ek baar Prana Pratishtha ho gaya, it continues. This is once a deity's place, always a deity's place until it has been sent back through Paddhati. It has not happened. So पहले वहाँ पे मंदिर था, प्राण प्रतिष्ठा वहाँ पे किया गया था, वहाँ पे मूर्ति की स्थापना हुई थी. That's the end of the matter. This is specifically the position recognized in Ram Janmabhoomi. Why does the logic of that position change with respect to the other places?
Because it was considered a one-off thing.
Exactly. Therefore, it is the number is the problem here. I'm saying number should be a problem. If Ganga Jamni Tehzeeb kicks in according to if it exists, exchange kar lo.
Nahi hoga na. How many will
So
you
that
do?
means that Tehzeeb doesn't exist. It's a myth. If it's a myth, okay.
No, Ganga Jamna Tehzeeb is coexistence.
Right.
It doesn't mean you give yours and I give mine.
So
and
truth, honesty and reclamation have no place in this concept.
I guess not.
So it's almost as good as the Pakistani position saying Kargil में जितना जगह हमने ले लिया वो हमारा हो गया. And coexistence उसके बाद चलता रहेगा. And they will move and the next wave will take more place. यही चलता रहेगा.
But ये हुआ ना, Aksai Chin went away.
That's because
POK went away.
So therefore, that is because the so-called Indian state has chosen never to respond. We are being told this is a new Bharat. If it's a new Bharat, will it not revisit these concepts? Okay, simpler question. ठीक है भाई, in the context of 1992, you said ये हुआ वो हुआ, ठीक है. अब तो legally हो रहा है. ASI के द्वारा survey हो रहा है. Even that you have a problem with. A perfectly constitutional method through a court of law, through a court-appointed commissioner with experts, and through a specific provision that envisages, enables, and permits this kind of a survey, that too is unconstitutional. So what are you saying? Give up. So that these monuments that have been built to glorify particular invasion and domination continue. I don't care for the political aspect of it. I genuinely don't care for the political aspect of it or the cultural aspect of it. I am on fundamental questions of theology. Why should one person who has built a certain place with his asta give it up? On what anvils? And for who? What is this audience that we are expected to cater to?
Gave it up. No, give it up kahan pe? It happened.
Where kahan pe?
Hundreds of years ago, right?
Right. Okay. Gave it up in the sense, तलवार लेके आपके सामने कोई खड़ा हो गया.
हाँ.
Therefore, he is saying that maro ya bhago. And therefore, that translates to what? Relinquishment? No, it does not. It certainly does not. How many examples of other, let's say, sites do you want where there were continued waves of resistance, just as Ram Janmabhoomi? The problem with the understanding of the Ram Janmabhoomi case is that we think of it as an exceptional situation where that is perhaps the only site for which there was constant resistance and let's say, defiance. No, that's not the case. Kashi bhi to kya hai? So who am I actually representing? I am representing the royal family which is reclaiming the Razia mosque because that was the original place according to them. And who's Razia? The same Razia that Justice Nariman actually extolled in a speech saying Razia Sultana was a feminist ruler, Bharat has produced all of this. It's the same person. There are records to this effect. So I think instead of dropping, let's say, numbers as a bogey, let's speak facts and solutions. Solutions hai. And there's a clear methodology that the Supreme Court has shown through its Ayodhya judgment. You don't want even that. Then I think there's a serious problem where on the one hand, the Places of Worship Act will not allow us to reclaim. Then state control of Hindu temples will deprive us of autonomy. And the Waqf Act effectively enables expansionism. What are we exactly enabling as a constitutional
So these two can't coexist?
They, according to me, are three uncomfortable cohabitants. One cannot exist as long as the other does. And if all three exist, they come at the detriment and to the peril
of society.
The civilization, Sanskriti, Bharatiya society.
Okay, now this a noted historian, Richard Eaton, who's written several books. He says that it's not just these dozen odd mosques in UP and Madhya Pradesh and all. There are at least 80 instances. He says 80 instances of mosques in India where evidence of prior temple desecration is fairly certain.
Okay.
This is what he says. Now there are many. There's a lot of literature available. Correct. And everybody will have a different number. And there's Sitaram Goel, this historian.
Hindu temples, what happened to them, volume 1, 2.
So he says, correct.
They said 2,000 temples and that's the tip of the iceberg.
And 1,000 temples, I
2,000.
think. 2,000?
And all these temples, Atala, Jaunpur and everything, they have been specifically mentioned in the opening chapter by Arun Shourie.
Okay, let's finish with Goel and then you tell me with Arun Shourie. He says, Mahmud of Ghazni robbed and burnt down 1,000 temples at Mathura, 10,000 in and around Kannauj. One of his successors, Ibrahim, demolished 1,000 temples each in Hindustan, which is the Ganga, Yamuna, Doab and Malwa. Muhammad Ghori destroyed another 1,000 at Varanasi. Kutubuddin Aibak employed elephants for pulling down 1,000 temples in Delhi. Ali Adil Shah of Bijapur destroyed 200 to 300 temples in Karnataka. A Sufi Khayyam Shah destroyed 12 temples in Tiruchirappalli. Now, some of them, obviously, let's presume even 50% of them remained destroyed. The others couldn't be destroyed because they were it was made of stone.
Correct.
So they couldn't be destroyed. So uske upar mosque banaya.
Have you been to Jagannath Puri?
Yes.
Have you seen the broken idols?
Yes.
The marks of sword?
Yeah, I've been till Ayutthaya to see in Thailand the destroyed temples. So, I mean, I've seen that was by a different thing. But what I'm trying to say is you've seen destroyed temples, you've seen Buddhist temples come up on them, you've seen, what's it called, mosques come up on them. अब उसको क्या करोगे आप? उसको अब वो मॉस्क तोड़ के उसको टेम्पल को रीबिल्ड करोगे, कितने रीबिल्ड करोगे?
जितने हो सके. Okay, so let's flip the question and ask a slightly different question. What is the acceptable number for the other side?
I don't know. You tell me.
0.
None. Yeah.
0. Because when one was being contested, that was not acceptable. So we are being told 0 is the acceptable number.
Yeah.
So that means even Kashi and Mathura we give up.
But it's not 0 of just the other side. There is a whole bunch of people in this country.
He knows.
Millions.
Hindus in name only. What? Because they are being told. Because we are being told by these geniuses.
What? He knows.
He knows. Hindus in name only.
This is really unfair, you know. It could be Hindus who don't want any more bloodshed. Hindus who don't want any more...
Why do they expect bloodshed? Who are they expecting it from? Why don't they answer that question?
Because when somebody makes a claim कि इसको तोड़ो फिर से बनाओ.
तो अब जवाब दो भाई कोर्ट में हमें मतलब you prove us wrong in court. Evidence for evidence. Evidence के जवाब में तलवार क्यों उठ रहा है भाई यहाँ पे? Prove us wrong, defeat us in court. Then the Hail Mary pass comes in. मतलब पूरा institution सारा मतलब this and that.
हाँ.
That is what we are being told.
So this is
नाचने जाने आंगन टेढ़ा.
So you can't say that Dushyant Dave is Nachna Jane Angan Teda.
I am not taking any names.
Okay, I am taking, no.
Then you take the responsibility.
I am taking name. He's saying that the judiciary in India, and I'm quoting, I'm not saying I am saying it. He's called it a majoritarian judiciary.
So when the electoral bond judgment was given, तब क्या हो रहा था?
Then
so many verdicts which have gone against the government. See, let's look at this. I don't hold brief for the government and nor do I wish to. The government will defend itself. My point is very simple. Community's interest, community's rights, can they be pegged within the four corners of the constitution? Period. And I am saying, prove the so-called majoritarian conspiracy and historical revisionism by coming to court. आपके जो witnesses हैं, either they are unreliable during राम जन्मभूमि, या आधे तो भाग ही जाते हैं, पलायन करने में मतलब नंबर 1 है. Articles लिखना जानते हैं. and they know how to hold forth on, let's say, comfortable platforms before, let's say, sympathetic audiences. But when it comes to actually proving their point before a court of law on the anvils of evidence, even that you didn't have the, let's say, the ability to do.
Justice Nariman, he called it mockery of justice on what happened. Why didn't he come to court at that point of time? Why didn't he say anything? Why are these people saying it after Justice Chandrachud has demitted office?
See, I think it's very unfair when members of a particular institution basically say that this institution has gone downhill after my exit. That I think is too much of a statement to make. And two, some of his statements, both on history and especially contentious aspects of history and his specific, let's say, points on the Ram Janmabhoomi case, are as inaccurate and incorrect as they can get. To say that there was no finding whatsoever from the Supreme Court on the existence of a temple underneath the disputed structure, call it only the disputed structure and nothing else, is false. It's provably, demonstrably and patently false. Read the judgment. Read the Allahabad High Court judgment. Read the addendum to the judgment of the Supreme Court, and you will see that there are instances where they say Guru Nanak visits the site once, मंदिर था. Guru Nanak बाद में आते हैं, मंदिर नहीं था. Okay, तो बीच में क्या आया? जलजला. हुआ क्या भाई वहां पे? And there are corroborating records. And you're telling me that a general pattern of behavior that has been witnessed across the subcontinent and across the world, you're telling me suddenly did not happen here. So we are not the playground for expansionist ideologies. We are only asking for what belongs to us through a court of law. What is unreasonable about this position? You can write articles, use your historians to, let's say, pixelate portions of this country's history, brainwash people, generations of people. And when called to court to say, इतना ही मतलब हमारा जो position इतना बेतुका है, तो आके prove तो कर दो भाई तुम court में. ना, that you will not do.
But in all these, now what he's saying is, Justice Nariman said that the court